Kurapika. Kurapika doesn't become a hunter for fun. He becomes a hunter because his entire world was wiped out. He was born into the Kurta clan, a quiet group living deep in the forests of Luxo province. They lived peacefully, kept to themselves, and carried a trait that would eventually doom them: the scarlet eyes. When a Kurta experience intense emotion, their eyes turn a vivid crimson, and those eyes become highly prized on the black market. As a kid, Kurapika nearly fell off a cliff and only survived because his best friend Pyro saved him. Pyro paid the price with permanent damage to his legs and eyes. Kurapika blamed himself and decided that he would leave the village one day to find a doctor who could help Pyro. But leaving wasn't easy. The clan elders were strict, and outsiders were dangerous. After constant requests, Kurapika was given one final test. He and Pyro were allowed to visit the outside world, as long as they never revealed their scarlet eyes. During the trip, the two were harassed by thugs who mocked Pyro's injuries. Kurapika lost control, his eyes turned scarlet, and he beat them down hard. The test still counted as a success thanks to Pyro swapping Kurapika's eye drops with medicine to hide the transformation. Kurapika was finally allowed to leave. 6 weeks later, the Phantom Troop attacked the Kurta clan while Kurapika was away and slaughtered all 128 members. Their scarlet eyes were carved out and sold in the black market. Kurapika returned to nothing. From that moment on, Kurapika made two promises. He would recover every stolen pair of scarlet eyes, and he would hunt down every single member of the Phantom Troop. That's why he joined the 287th Hunter exam. Being a hunter gives him access to money, connections, and power. On the way to the exam site, he meets Gon and Leorio, and despite their very different personalities, the three quickly bond. Throughout the exam, Kurapika shows how sharp he really is. In the first phase marathon, he keeps pace without trouble. In Trick Tower, he fights a man pretending to be a Phantom Troop member. Kurapika's eyes turn scarlet, and he knocks the guy out with a single punch. On a manhunt in Zevel Island during the fourth phase, Kurapika plays things smart, helping Leorio while quietly securing his own points. During the final tournament, he was matched up with Hisoka. Amidst the fight, Hisoka whispers something to him before forfeiting the match, letting Kurapika pass instantly. Kurapika earns his hunter license, and Hisoka tells them that they'll meet again in Yorknew City on September 1st with information about the Phantom Troop. After the exam, Kurapika goes looking for work as a bodyguard, but he's told his training isn't finished. That's when Nin enters the picture. For 6 months, Kurapika trains under Izunavi. He engineers his Nin ability for one purpose: killing the Phantom Troop. Kurapika is naturally a conjurer, meaning that he can create physical objects with Nin. What he creates is 5 chains, each attached to a finger on his right hand. Every chain has a specific function, and some of them exist purely to execute vengeance. To make his ability strong enough, Kurapika stacks brutal limitations on himself. And then there's the Scarlet Eyes. When Kurapika's eyes turn scarlet, he activates Emperor Time. In this state, he shifts from a conjurer into a specialist. Emperor Time allows him to use all Nin types at 100% efficiency. Every chain reaches its maximum potential in this state, but the trade-off is terrifying. Every second Emperor Time stays active, he loses 1 hour of his lifespan. Now, let's break down the chains, because this is where Kurapika becomes genuinely horrifying. The dowsing chain sits on his ring finger. It ends in a small weighted ball and works both as a weapon and an investigation tool. Kurapika uses it to block attacks, strike enemies, and perform pendulum dowsing. It can track missing people by pointing in their direction and detect lies by the way it swings. Normally, Kurapika needs to face the target directly, but under Emperor Time, he can even detect lies through video recordings, as long as he's met the person before. The chain gel is on his middle finger, and this one exists for a single group, the Phantom Troop. It's an extremely durable chain that wraps around the target and forces them into Zetsu, completely shutting off their Nin. To make this chain unbreakable, Kurapika set a deadly rule for this ability. If he ever uses chain gel on someone who is not a member of the Phantom Troop, he dies. The holy chain on his thumb draws from enhancement type Nin. In Emperor Time, it can heal severe injuries almost instantly. Broken bones, deep wounds, injuries that would normally end a fight are patched up in seconds. The judgment chain on his little finger is pure execution. A blade pierces the victim and wraps around their heart. Kurapika then declares a rule. If the rule is broken, the chain pierces their heart and kills them instantly. Kurapika himself bears a judgment chain around his own heart as part of the conditions tied to chain gel. Because of his weak affinity for emission and manipulation, judgment chain only works while Emperor Time is active. Then there's the steel chain on his index finger. The tip is shaped like a syringe. When it pierces a target, it drains their aura and steals one of their nin abilities. The victim is forced into a Zetsu-like state and cannot use that ability until its return. Even if the original owner dies, Kurapika keeps the ability. When Emperor Time is active, Steel Chain summons a dolphin-shaped nin beast called Stealth Dolphin. Only Kurapika can see or hear it. The dolphin analyzes stolen abilities, explaining their name, function, and condition. He can use the stolen ability himself or loan it to someone else, including non-nin users, by injecting it into them. The recipient gets a listening device in their ear that lets them communicate with the dolphin and receive guidance. Any stolen ability is fueled by aura taken from the original owner, so it retains full power. Each stolen ability can only be used once before returning to its owner. Emperor Time cannot be deactivated while Stealth Dolphin is holding an ability, and Kurapika cannot dismiss the dolphin until the ability has been used at least once. If any stolen ability remains unreturned, Emperor Time stays active, steadily burning away Kurapika's lifespan. After mastering his abilities, Kurapika begins actively hunting the Phantom Troop. In August, he applies for a bodyguard job at a flesh collector's mansion. During the interview, masked attackers storm the place. Kurapika blocks bullets with his dowsing chain and identifies the infiltrators. He passes alongside Melody, Basho, and Baze, and they're hired to protect Neon Nestrad, a specialist with a fortune-telling ability that makes her family powerful in the Mafia world. On September 1st, they arrive in Yorknew City for the underground auction. That night, the Phantom Troop attacks, slaughtering bodyguards and Mafia members. Kurapika eventually encounters Uvogin, one of the troop's strongest fighters. Despite Uvogin's overwhelming power, Kurapika captures him with chain jail. After a failed rescue attempt that kills Dazzline, Kurapika is promoted to team leader. He faces Uvogin alone and kills him in a brutal nin battle. From that moment on, Kurapika becomes the Phantom Troop's top priority target. Using careful planning and judgment chain, Kurapika later captures the Phantom Troop's leader, Chrollo. When the troop captures Gon and Killua, Kurapika makes a hostage exchange deal before placing conditions on both Chrollo and Pakunoda through judgment chain. Chrollo is forbidden from using nin or contacting the troop, while Pakunoda is forbidden from revealing Kurapika's identity. The exchange succeeds, and Kurapika collapses from exhaustion due to prolonged Emperor Time use. After his recovery, he leaves Yorknew and continues recovering the Scarlet Eyes. Later, he's nominated by Leorio for the Zodiacs and recruited by Mazai-Stom. Kurapika joins after learning that Prince Zeraidnik of the Kakin Empire owns a massive collection of Scarlet Eyes. As the new Rat Zodiac, Kurapika exposes a spy among the Zodiacs and becomes an examiner for the 289th Hunter exam. He then boards the Black Whale as a bodyguard for Queen Oito and her infant daughter, Prince Wobble, during the Succession War. On the ship, Kurapika uncovers the existence of guardian spirit beasts tied to each prince. He captures an assassin, steals his nin ability, and begins building fragile alliances between factions. He teaches nin to multiple bodyguards, secretly accelerating their awakening using Emperor Time and Stealth Dolphin. Each lesson drains his lifespan, but it creates balance in a war designed to crush weaker players instantly. So why is Kurapika one of the deadliest hunters in the series? When you break it down, the only chain that's strictly reserved for the Phantom Troop is the unbreakable chain jail enforced with limitation. If Kurapika ever uses on someone who isn't a spider, he dies on the spot. Every other chain, though, is fair game against anyone. That's what makes him such a nightmare. We're talking about a brilliant young hunter with outstanding analytical skills that had led to a rumor that he can read minds, and a master strategist who can formulate flawless plans to outsmart any opponent. He can knock you out with a ball-shaped weight, steal your abilities, heal his own injuries in mere seconds, and slap you with a rule where breaking it means instant death. Once Emperor Time is active, trying to figure out a clean way to beat him becomes borderline impossible. Realistically, the best hope is that he burns through the last of his lifespan before you ever get the chance. Kite. Kite's path as a hunter starts with Jing Freaks. He becomes Jing's disciple after believing that meeting him saved his life when he was wasting away in a disease-filled alley. Jing takes him in, teaches him what it really means to be a hunter, and trains him in nin from the ground up. Through his training, he becomes sharp, disciplined, and terrifyingly efficient. As a final test, Jing tells him to track him down and catch him, which already says a lot about the level Kite was expected to reach. 3 years before Gon takes the hunter exam, Kite travels to Whale Island while searching for Jing. That's where he meets 8-year-old Gon, who is getting mauled by a fox bear protecting its cub. Kite steps in and kills the mother fox bear to save Gon. Right after that, He punches Gon and tears into him for being careless enough to force that situation in the first place. Kite then moves to kill the cub to prevent future danger, but Gon stops him and promises to raise it himself. Kite notices the resolve in Gon and asks about his father. When Gon confirms Jing is his dad, Kite reveals the truth. Jing is alive and working as a professional hunter. Before leaving, Kite hands Gon Jing's hunter license and tells him that finding Jing is the hardest hunt in the world. Eventually, Kite succeeds. After tracking down Jing, he takes a 3-year contract with the Kakian Empire to document undiscovered species. Even though he personally discovers fewer species than others on his team, his discovery of camp tigers becomes the most important find in the entire expedition. Later on, after Gon clears Greed Island and uses the accompany card to reach Jing, Jing redirects him to Kite instead. At that point, Kite is leading an ecological research team on a biological survey. He's guiding aspiring hunters, already showing how respected and trusted he is in the field. When a severed arm from an enlarged Chimera ant queen is discovered, Kite traces its origins to the NGO autonomous state and leads the investigation himself. Once they enter NGO, Kite's level becomes painfully clear. Kite is a conjurer with dual affinity towards transmutation, and his aura output is massive. His end stretches to about 45 meters, with small fluctuations depending on his condition. That kind of range already puts him well above the average hunter. He uses end constantly to monitor threats, read the battlefield, and protect his team. His nin ability, Crazy Slots, is where things get unpredictable. Crazy Slots summons a clown-like nin beast that produces weapons at random. Kite sets strict conditions on himself. He cannot choose which weapon he gets, and once a weapon appears, it won't disappear until he uses it. These restrictions massively boost the strength of whatever he draws. A roulette wheel appears on the clown's tongue, numbered from 1 to 9, and the number that comes up determines the weapon he receives. The clown talks constantly and comments on Kite's choices and conditions, usually annoying him in the process. Only 3 of these weapons are shown, and even that limited sample is brutal. When Crazy Slots rolls number 4, Kite conjures a carbine that looks like a long-barreled handgun fused with an extended stock. It fires extremely powerful rounds in rapid succession and does so with little to no sound, likely due to a suppressor-like structure on the barrel. Kite uses this weapon to effortlessly kill the Chimera Ant squadron leader, Yeonju, ending the fight before it ever becomes a threat. When Crazy Slot rolls number 2, Kite conjures a massive scythe with a blade so large it dominates the battlefield. This weapon can only be used one way. Kite must activate Silent Waltz, which is the only technique tied to it. After increasing the blade size, Kite spins the scythe in a full circle, releasing an invisible slash in every direction. When he used this against a platoon of Chimera ants, every single one of them is bisected instantly, and the surrounding trees collapse from the force. Number 3 gives him a strange clown-like mace, or staff, that he grips in reverse. The true nature of this weapon is never fully explained, but the clown refers to it as a good number, which strongly suggests it carries some serious potential. This is the weapon Kite pulls out when things turn desperate. That desperation hits when Kite senses Nerfer P2. The moment Kite feels P2's in, he knows the gap in power is overwhelming. He orders Gon and Killua to run immediately. P2 appears and slices off Kite's right arm without effort. Kite recognizes that his student staying would only get them killed, so Killua knocks out Gon and escapes while Kite stays behind. Armed with his conjured weapon, Kite fights to buy them time. Even with his skill, experience, and nin mastery, Kite is killed by Nerfer P2. P2 finds the fight so entertaining that they keep Kite's body instead of feeding it to the queen. His corpse is reanimated and used as a training puppet for Chimera Ant soldiers. Later, Knuckle and Shoot retrieve the body and bring it before Gon, who clings to it and swears revenge. But Kite's story doesn't end there. After Meruem is born, the Chimera Ant Queen produces another child. Colt discovers this newborn in the queen's remains and vows to protect them. Through an unexplained mechanism tied to Crazy Slots, specifically a number that only appears when Kite desperately wants to survive, Kite is reincarnated as this Chimera Ant. Colt raised the child as a human and names them Reyna after his sister. Eventually, the child reclaims the name Kite. This new body matures rapidly into a young girl with red hair, purple eyes, and freckles. Most importantly, Kite retains all memories from his previous life. When Gon visits after recovering, he apologizes for what happened with Nerfer P2. Kite is happy to see him and encourages him to continue pursuing Jing, promising help if it's ever needed. Illumi Zoldyck. Combining deadly intent with pure psychological horror basically gives you Illumi Zoldyck. Illumi is the eldest son of the Zoldyck family, raised from birth to kill without hesitation. Assassination isn't a job to him, it's normal life. He follows his family's brutal traditions perfectly, but what really separates them from the rest is his obsession with control, especially when it comes to his younger brother Killua. Illumi doesn't see Killua as a person, he sees him as a possession that must be shaped, restrained, and protected at any cost. Illumi's first major appearance happens during the 287th Hunter exam, where he enters under the disguise of a guitar rocker. Using nin needles, he completely alters his face and body structure, making himself almost unrecognizable. His mother sends him to the exam with one task in mind: keep an eye on Killua, who ran away from home to become a hunter. Throughout most of the exam, Illumi maintains this disguise. He quietly assists Hisoka when it benefits him and kills multiple examinees without drawing attention. Even while pretending to be just another weird applicant, his presence feels off. That's because Illumi is a manipulator with an extremely sinister rin that can be sensed from several hundred meters away. Even experienced nin users feel uncomfortable around him. Illumi's core ability revolves around nin needles inserted directly into a target's brain. Once the needle is in a place, he can condition the victim with preset commands. These commands activate automatically the moment the victim tries to act against them. The terrifying part is how subtle it feels. Victims believe these thoughts are their own instincts or habits. Strong willpower alone won't break the control. Anyone who resists suffers worsening headaches that slowly reveal the needle's location. By embedding multiple needles, Illumi can manipulate dead bodies as well. These needle people can speak, drive vehicles, and carry out complex tasks. They have no free will and can be ordered to fight, deceive others, or kill themselves. Some look obviously controlled due to stiff movements, but others can pass as normal people if Illumi places the needles carefully. When used on living targets, every victim loses all sentience and continues following orders until they die from exhaustion or injuries. If someone survives, they are permanently crippled. Illumi usually inserts a single needle into the back of the head, creating those unmistakable twitchy movements. In cases where two needles are placed in the forehead, the victim can behave almost perfectly normal. It's implied that these victims were killed through needle insertion alone, as no other wounds are visible. Illumi's true identity is revealed during the final phase of the Hunter exam when he faces Killua directly. The confrontation is psychologically devastating. Illumi reminds Killua that he was trained solely to kill and insists that friendship and personal desire are impossible for him. When Killua expresses his desire to be friends with Gon, Illumi threatens to kill Gon unless Killua forfeits the match. This is when the truth comes out. Years earlier, under Silva's orders, Illumi implanted a nin needle into Killua's brain. The needle forces Killua to flee from fights he isn't absolutely certain he can win. It also suppresses emotions and memories, which explains why Killua abandoned his sister Alluka in the past. Faced with this manipulation, Killua forfeits the match, and Illumi secures his hunter license. After the exam, Gon confronts Illumi and attacks him in rage, even breaking his arm. The needle in Killua's brain remains until the Chimera Ant crisis. Killua finally recognizes the manipulation and removes it himself. During the Yorknew City arc, Illumi works alongside Maha and Kaluto after being hired by Chrollo to assassinate the Mafia's 10 Dons, who plays bounties on the Phantom Troop. Illumi completes the job efficiently and stops Zeno and Silva from harming his client just in time. Later, he assists Hisoka by disguising himself as the magician to infiltrate the troop's hideout while Hisoka searches for Chrollo. Illumi's most disturbing role comes during the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc. His obsession shifts fully towards Alluka, who possesses a terrifying wish-granting ability through her other self, Nanika. Illumi wants absolute control over that power, even if it costs lives. Flashbacks reveal that he experimented with Alluka's abilities in the past, leading to at least 67 deaths. When Killua attempts to use Alluka's power to heal Gon, Illumi pursues them relentlessly. He manipulates drivers to run Killua's car off a cliff and unleashes needle people across cities and airships. Even top-tier hunters struggle against someone who can hijack minds from a distance and flood the battlefield with living puppets. Hunters sent to stop him are killed without hesitation. Illumi openly declares that family members cannot kill each other during internal missions, but he does not consider Alluka family. That statement pushes Killua into direct confrontation. Illumi claims he wants Alluka only to protect the family and is even willing to die for that cause. The chase ends when Tsubone appears and Killua uses his wish to heal Tsubone's hand, showing Illumi that healing wishes don't have consequences, so healing Gon would not endanger the Zoldyck family at all. Because of that, Illumi backs off for a while and lets Killua heal Gon since there's no immediate danger. He likely figures out that once Gon is saved, Killua might be more open to handing over Alika afterward. Upon seeing Nanika's power while healing Gon, Illumi gets too ecstatic in possessing such overwhelming power. Killua responds by awakening Nanika and wishing for Illumi to be sent home. Illumi is then instantly teleported back to the Zoldyck estate. Most recently, Illumi joined the Phantom Troop at Hisoka's request, becoming member number 11 after Uvugen's death. He boards the Black Whale during the Succession Contest arc, supposedly hunting Hisoka as part of their twisted arrangement. Illumi describes the relationship as mutual benefit and casually implies Hisoka will pay him if killed. Despite joining the troop, Illumi immediately betrays them by informing Zodiac member Mizai Stom of their presence. Hisoka Moro. Hisoka is driven by one thing and one thing only: the thrill of fighting strong opponents. His past barely matters to him, and that mystery feels intentional. Whatever shaped him clearly worked, because he grew into someone who treats combat like entertainment and murder like a hobby. At some point after the Kurta massacre, Hisoka joined the Phantom Troop under false pretenses, replacing the previous member number 4 about 2 years before the Yorknew City arc. He had no loyalty to the group and skipped meetings whenever he felt like it because the troop was never his home. It was a hunting ground. Around the same time, he also initiated Castro into Nin at Heaven's Arena after sensing his potential, which already tells you how Hisoka operates. He plants seeds just to see what kind of fight they might grow into later. Hisoka is a transmuter with a deeply unsettling aura. His Nin feels aggressive, playful, and threatening all at once. He named his 2 signature abilities after a chewing gum brand he enjoyed as a kid. Those abilities are Bungee Gum and Texture Surprise. Bungee Gum is the core of Hisoka's combat style. It has both the properties of rubber and gum, allowing him to give his aura the properties of both stickiness and elasticity. That combo makes it insanely flexible in combat. He can activate it from his fingers, hands, and feet, and he can attach it through direct contact or by extending it outward toward a target. Dodging it is difficult, because he doesn't need a clean hit to latch on. Once Bungee Gum is attached, he can command it to contract whenever he wants. The more it stretches, the harder it snaps back. He uses this offensively by pulling opponents towards him, yanking weapons out of their hands, or turning it into flail-like weapons. He could then detach it from his body entirely, though it tears once it reaches about 10 meters. Even then, that's more than enough range for deadly setups. One of his favorite tricks is detaching Bungee Gum and attaching it to projectiles, especially his shoe-enhanced playing cards. He often conceals the aura using N, which makes the trap nearly impossible to detect. By stacking multiple layers of hidden Bungee Gum, he can trigger everything at once and kill an opponent before they even realize they're caught. He also admits it to restrain people outright by locking them in place with overwhelming force. Outside of straight-up killing, Bungee Gum gives Hisoka absurd mobility. He sticks it to walls or solid surfaces to launch himself away at high speed. He uses it on his feet to cling to the ground or run along walls. He sticks objects in place for traps or keeps hold of weapons even after throwing them. He can even slap it over an open wound to instantly stop bleeding, letting him stay in fights that would normally end things right there. Then there's Texture Surprise, the ability that turns Hisoka into a walking lie. This lets him apply his aura to smooth flat surfaces like paper or cloth and change their appearance and texture. He can replicate over 1,000 different textures, which is wild. He has full top Nin users, including Phantom Troop members, without them noticing anything off by sight or touch. Texture Surprise can also be applied to pure aura, including Bungee Gum, letting Hisoka alter his own appearance. Once it's active, no aura is detectable through normal senses or extrasensory perception. Even non-Nin users can see the illusion clearly. Because it requires Hisoka's direct action to remove and leaves no detectable aura, it's widely understood to function as a conjuration ability. It's perfect for disguises, fake injuries, fake markings, and long cons that only fall apart when Hisoka wants them to. Hisoka entered the 287th Hunter exam as applicant number 44. He had already been disqualified from the 286th exam after killing 20 examinees and nearly murdering a proctor. From the moment the exam starts, he establishes himself as a walking threat. When another applicant bumps into him without apologizing, Hisoka calmly severs the man's arms. During the first trial, he keeps pace with the exam proctor, Satots, without effort. When the fog rolls in the Millsy wetlands, he indulges himself by attacking nearby examinees, including Kurapika and Leorio. Gon steps in and strikes Hisoka with his fishing rod to save Leorio, and instead of getting angry, Hisoka becomes fascinated. He senses Gon's potential immediately and evaluates both Gon and Leorio as future hunters worth sparing. He later completes Trick Tower in just 6 hours and 17 minutes, faster than any other candidate. During the fourth phase on Zevel Island, he spends 2 days doing absolutely nothing before casually collecting random badges. Gon manages to steal his badge, and instead of retaliating, he is impressed. When Gon is incapacitated by the applicant targeting him, he kills that applicant, who turns out to be his target, returns his badge to Gon, and lets him pass the exam, and decides that he still needs time before they fight seriously. When Gon refuses to accept the badge, he knocks the boy out cold and tells him that he'll take the badge back if he can punch him like he did. In the final phase tournament, Hisoka faces Kurapika and whispers something to him during their match before he forfeits, giving Kurapika the win. He later defeats Botaro in his next match to earn his hunter license, and later warns Illumi to stay away from Gon when the latter confronts him about Killua, making it clear that Gon is his target alone. Hisoka then follows Gon and Killua to Heaven's Arena and blocks their entry to the 200th floor using Rin until they learn Nin. After they master 10 under wing, he allows them to proceed and promises to fight Gon if he can win a match on that floor. Hisoka's fight with Castro shows just how dangerous his mind really is. Castro starts strong, taking a 4-0 lead and severing Hisoka's arms. The entire time, he studies Castro's Nin double ability. He explains that as an enhancer, Castro lacks the mental capacity to properly maintain such a complex conjuration technique. He reveals that he had already attached his severed arm using bungee gum and uses it, along with the scattered cards, to kill Castro on the spot. After the match, Machi shows up and reattaches his arms, and he hides the seams with bungee gum and Texture's surprise. She informs him about the Phantom Troop meeting in Yorknew City and mentions that Chrollo might punish him for skipping meetings. Alone, Hisoka removes his fake spider tattoo, revealing his infiltration of the troop from the start. After Gon defeats Guido and Rivelt, Hisoka schedules their fight for July 10th. At the start of the fight, Gon is able to land a single solid punch, which earns Hisoka's approval when he accepts his badge from Gon. But the fight is completely one-sided. Hisoka dominates using Bungee Gum's versatility and raw skill, then declares their next encounter will be to the death before stepping out of the arena with the victory. During the Yorknew City arc, Hisoka attends the Phantom Troop meeting where Chrollo orders the underground auction robbery. His true goal becomes clear when he approaches Kurapika and offers information on 7 spiders in exchange for cooperation. Both want Chrollo, but for very different reasons. He sees Kurapika's motive against the troop as a way to isolate Chrollo and have a one-on-one fight with him. When Chrollo uses lovely Ghost Rider to write fortunes, Hisoka's prophecy exposes his betrayal and predicts a fight with Chrollo. To manipulate the situation, Hisoka alters his own fortune using Texture's surprise to keep Chrollo in the city. He also feeds Kurapika information about the fake corpses to force events towards his desired outcome. When Chrollo is captured, Hisoka hires Illumi to disguise himself as Hisoka and stay with the troop. He tracks Pakunoda to Lingon Airport for the hostage exchange deal and threatens to kill Gon and Killua if they don't bring him along. After the successful exchange, everything falls apart when Chrollo reveals his Nin is sealed by Kurapika's judgment chain, so he can no longer use Nin. Disgusted by a broken opponent, Hisoka spares him and walks away. Later, Hisoka enters Greed Island at Chrollo's request to find a Nin exorcist. He appears before the troop under Chrollo's name, and eventually helps Gon's team defeat Razor just to pass the time. Once Gon clears the game, Hisoka exits the game alongside the exorcist. During the chairman election chaos, he assists Illumi in his plan to capture Alluka, kills Goto using bungee gum, slaughters hunters sent after him under Bushidora's orders, and personally kills Teradine Neutral. Hisoka finally gets his long-awaited fight with Chrollo at Heaven's Arena before the succession contest starts. Chrollo prepares extensively, using multiple stolen Hatsu from his previous victims and borrowed abilities from other members of the troop. The fight is brutal and calculated, and Chrollo kills Hisoka by overwhelming him with bomb puppets made from the audience. But Hisoka doesn't stay dead. He had preset his Nin to activate after death, using bungee gum to restart his heart and lungs, and Texture's surprise to recreate missing limbs and patch injuries. This resurrection changes everything. Hisoka's sociopathic nature intensified dramatically as he vowed to hunt down and kill every member of the Phantom Troop, abandoning his previous code of only fighting opponents in their preferred conditions. He no longer cared whether his targets were prepared or defenseless. The troop had become prey to be exterminated. He kills Cortopi and Shalinark without hesitation, and boards the Black Whale headed for the Dark Continent, where many troop members are also traveling. At this point, Hisoka stops being a thrill seeker and becomes a Grim Reaper focused solely on the troops' annihilation. That's why Hisoka earns his place among the deadliest hunters. He was already terrifying before his post-mortem transformation, and now he doesn't care about fairness anymore, making him deadlier than ever. Adult Gon. Gon becomes a hunter for one main reason. He wants to find his dad, Jing Freaks. Jing is a legendary hunter who chose his career over raising his son, and Gon grows up wanting to understand why being a hunter mattered more than family. That curiosity really takes shape after Gon meets Kite, one of Jing's students. That encounter plants the idea that hunters live lives worth chasing, even if they're dangerous and lonely. During the preliminary phase of the 287th Hunter exam, Gon meets Leorio and Kurapika, and the three of them push through the early trials together. In the first phase, Gon meets Killua, and four of them quickly form a group. They clear both the first and second phases without too much trouble. Early on, Gon comes off as cheerful and straightforward, but that hides how sharp he can be. In the third phase, at Drake Tower, he outsmarts a serial bomber and becomes the first member of his team to secure a win. When the group gets trapped in the path the majority rules, Gon comes up with a clever solution that allows all 5 members to pass. He doesn't overthink things, but when the pressure hits, he locks in fast. At the start of the series, Gon relies heavily on his fishing rod. He swings it with insane accuracy, using it for movement, control, and offense when needed. It's simple, but in his hands, it's dangerous. During the fourth phase on Zevo Island, Gon draws Hisoka's number as his target. Gon tails Hisoka for an entire day without being noticed. This works because Gon unknowingly uses Zetsu, and Hisoka's own bloodlust masks Gon's presence. After preparing in advance, Gon uses his fishing rod to steal Hisoka's badge from long range, while Hisoka is moving at high speed to attack his target. Even so, Gon ends up owing Hisoka a favor when Hisoka kills the person hunting him and returns the badge he took from him. That didn't sit well with him, and he vows to settle his score with Hisoka someday. But for now, becoming a hunter is his top priority, so he swallows his broken pride and takes the badge to pass the test. The final phase is a tournament. Gon faces Hanzo in his first match and gets completely outclassed in combat. Even then, Gon refuses to give up. His sheer stubbornness pushes Hanzo to forfeit, making Gon the first applicant to officially pass the exam. But Gon refuses to accept the win and insists on a proper fight, which annoys Hanzo enough to knock him out. Gon wakes up after the exam ends and learns Killua failed the exam due to Illumi's manipulation. After receiving their licenses, Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio head to Kukuru Mountain to bring Killua back. Once Killua is allowed to leave, Gon and Killua head to Heaven's Arena to train and earn money, while Kurapika and Leorio pursue their own goals. Kurapika informs them that Hisoka will be in Yorknew City on September 1st, and the four promise to meet there. Gon and Killua tear through the lower floors of Heaven's Arena and meet Zushi and his teacher Wing, who introduces them to Nin. When they reach the 200th floor, Hisoka stops them using Nin and makes it clear that they're not ready. Wing steps in and commits to teaching them Nin properly, marking the real start of Gon's growth. After learning 10, Gon and Killua return to the 200th floor and pass Hisoka's Nin barrier. Hisoka welcomes them and agrees to fight Gon if he can win a match on that floor. Gon trains rapidly under Wing, and water divination reveals he's an enhancer. That gives him naturally high strength and recovery. Using just the basic concepts of Nin, Gon wins his fights in the 200th floor that earn him a match against Hisoka. Despite his crushing defeat, Hisoka acknowledges his improvements and accepts his badge. Gon would later develop his own Hatsu after their scuffle with the Phantom Troop. To enter Greed Island, the game Jing co-designed, Gon needed to showcase a Nin ability, which pushes him to develop his Hatsu. Gon had no idea where to start at first. With Wing guiding him, he runs through Tin, Gyo, and Zetsu to funnel all of his aura into his fist, then cranks it up with Rin. Once he gets it right, he punches straight through walls and breaking boulders with a single hit. Inside the game, he meets Bisky Kruger, Wing's master. She sees his raw potential and takes over his training. Under Bisky, Gon develops Jajunkin, his signature Nin ability. Jajunkin has 3 forms. Rock is close range and the strongest. He focuses aura into his fist using Ko and charges the attack. If he has time to build Rin, the punch becomes even stronger. Rock hits harder than a standard Ko strike. Scissors is mid-range. He transmutes his aura into a blade extending from his fingers. With Surprise, it cuts through defenses that could stop Rock. Paper is long range. He emits aura from his palm as a spherical projectile. Since emission isn't his natural type, it has less than a quarter of Rock's power despite using the same amount of aura. Even so, it's dangerous against weaker nin users and works well in coordinated attacks. His fight with Razor and Ginthru pushes nin growth massively. At first, Gon shows stronger emission than transmutation, but by the time he meets Kite and NGL after he clears the game, his transmutation skills may have surpassed it. He masters all 4 basic nin techniques and at least 5 advanced ones, possibly excluding in and in. Even so, his Rin allows him to sense attacks that he shouldn't be able to react to. Despite being a rookie hunter, Gon defeats powerful Chimera ants like Ramot, Centipede, and Barrow. His potential becomes obvious. Hisoka, Wing, Bisky, Razor, and Netero all see how far Gon could go. Everything points towards him becoming an ultimate enhancer like Netero if he keeps his training for decades. But that future never happens. Gon has a self-destructive side that shows up when his emotions spiral. When anger takes over, he loses all restraint. That breaking point comes when Pito kills Kite and later uses Kite's corpse as a training puppet. Once Gon accepts Kite can't be saved, his rage fully takes control. Gon knows his current strength isn't enough to defeat Pitou, so he makes one of the most extreme vows in the series. In that moment, he sacrifices everything. He forces his body into its ultimate form, drawing out every ounce of power he would ever have in his lifetime. His body ages forward, reaching a level that would normally take decades of non-stop training as his physical strength, aura output, and nin capacity explode. Pitou becomes terrified, even considering that Gon might rival Meruem. His speed increases to the point that he effortlessly avoids Tepsakura, even after Pitou pushes it to the limit. A single co-enhanced kick sends Pitou flying and coughing blood, something even Netero failed to do. His first adult Jinjunkin launches Pitou across a hill and knocks them unconscious. At this point, it's been clear that the fight becomes completely one-sided. A few more attacks later, Pitou is dead as an enraged adult Gon continues to smash their broken skull with continuous Jinjunkin. When Killua sees Gon in this state, he immediately understands that this level of power should have taken decades to achieve. He realized Gon has compressed his entire life force and threw away his future to win that fight, which means Gon will never be able to use Nin again. After the battle, Gon's body shrinks back to normal and collapses. He falls into a coma, his body rapidly decaying and requiring life support. Without Nanika's intervention, he would have died. Even after being healed, Gon completely loses the ability to see or use aura. Jing later explains that Gon simply returned to normal, and surviving at all is something he should be grateful for. So here's the reality. Base Gon, for most of the series, isn't anywhere near as deadly as people like Hisoka or Illumi. He's talented, stubborn, and dangerous in bursts, but he's still growing. Adult Gon is something else entirely. That version of Gon annihilates a royal guard through raw force, speed, and overwhelming nin. Even if it only existed for a short time, that power was real and it was terrifying. This gives us a sneak peek at what Gon could become with non-stop training and real combat experience under his belt. If he ever hits that peak anytime soon, there will almost be nothing alive that can stop him. Before we move on to number 1, keep in mind that heavy hitters like Meruem, Chrollo, Zoldyck, and beyond Netero aren't on this list. They're insanely strong, but they're not technically official hunters. We're sticking strictly to the official hunters to keep things clear and avoid any confusion. On top of this, like with actual hunters such as Jing Freaks, not enough is known about their true power to confidently place them on this list, but they surely would be contenders. Isaac Netero. The number 1 spot goes to Isaac Netero, the former chairman of the Hunter Association and the most dangerous official hunter we ever see in the series. This is the guy everyone measures themselves against. He serves as the 12th chairman and was widely recognized as the strongest nin user of his era. Netero trained in martial arts his entire life. By the time he hit 46, he believed he reached his physical limit. Instead of slowing down, he went into the mountains during winter to reflect. He felt overwhelming gratitude towards martial arts and made a brutal vow. Every single day, he would perform 10,000 punches, each one preceded by focusing his chi, bringing his hands together, and saying a prayer. At first, each punch and prayer cycle took 5 to 6 seconds. That meant over 18 hours of non-stop training every day. After 2 years, he finished the full set and noticed the sun was still up. 2 more years later, he completed the entire ritual in under an hour. By the time he returned to his dojo at age 50, he could strike faster than sound itself. The dojo's grandmaster was so moved that he begged Netero to train him and offered to step down. Netero agreed, and from that point on, the dojo taught Shingen-ryu Kung Fu. After becoming a hunter, Netero joined the Pure Paladin Squad and took part in 2 Dark Continent expeditions, one official and one unofficial, where Zig Zoldyck and Line Hors d'oeuvre also took part in. When his son Beyond later tried to organize another expedition, Netero shut it down immediately and pushed the V5 to ban access to the Dark Continent entirely. Netero first appears during the second phase of the 287th Hunter exam, when an examiner tries to fail everyone over a bad meal. He calls out her behavior and forces her to create a new test she must participate in herself. Afterward, he introduced himself as chairman of the exam selection committee. He takes interest in Gon and Killua and challenges them to take a ball from him for the hunter license, but they fail completely. After the third phase, Netero sets up the final phase using a tournament bracket based on exam performance. He and the other examiners quietly observe every match until the end. A year later, the Chimera Ant crisis begins, where he forms an extermination team with Nob and Moral. They meet Killua and an unconscious Gon at the NGL border. Before heading into NGL, Netero instructs Killua to defeat Moral's apprentices in a nearby town if they want to join the extermination team. To discreetly cut down the Ant's population, Netero's strategy is simple and deadly. Moral creates a smokescreen to conceal the Ants. Nob isolates them by trapping them into his Nin space, where Netero awaits them for execution. Steadily, Netero eliminates squadron leaders one by one while recovering between fights. Once the king is born, Netero steps back and prepares for the final battle. He hires Illumi Zoldyck to help separate the king from the royal guards so he can face the king one-on-one. He later agrees to let Gon and Killua, despite losing to Knuckle and Shoot, join the team as they need every capable hunter to distract the royal guards. On the night of the attack, Silva flies him over the palace using Dragon Head before using Dragon Dive to pierce through the entire palace, entering Komugi and forcing the king to move. Zeno then activates Dragon Head and carries the king and Netero away, setting the stage for the final fight. This is where Netero's Nin ability fully appears. The 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva summons a massive Nin statue with countless arms. To attack, Netero brings his hands together in prayer and an arm strikes in perfect sync. The entire motion takes less than 0.1 seconds and can be repeated thousands of times per minute. One strike was enough to launch Neferpitou without them even understanding what happened. The statue uses multiple Nin categories at once. Emission forms the construct, enhancement boosts its force, and manipulation controls its movement through Netero's hand gestures. The attack combinations are nearly endless. Against Meruem, Netero opens with first hand. Netero brings his hand together and follows it up with a chopping motion, which makes the Bodhisattva slam down with a brutal chop. When he uses it on Meruem, the king spits out blood, admits he never saw the attack coming, and the impact carves a deep crack into the ground. He follows up with third hand, where Netero brings his hands together and claps. The Bodhisattva mirrors the motion, slamming its palms together to crush the target in between. Meruem walks it off, forcing the hands apart almost instantly. When the pressure keeps rising, Netero activates 99th hand. He collapses his hand, rests his right ankle on his left calf, and links his thumbs and index finger to form a sign that looks like 99. The Bodhisattva unleashes a non-stop storm of palm strikes with all of its arms, smashing the ground so hard that it caves in. Netero holds the pose the entire time and doesn't need to pray between strikes. Even after losing a leg and an arm, Netero keeps going. That's when he uses Zero Hand, his absolute last move. This technique only comes out when none of Guanyin's other attacks will work. Netero prays with everything he has left while raising a single hand. The Bodhisattva appears behind the enemy and gently closes its palm around them. It then gathers every remaining bit of Netero's aura into its mouth and fires it off in one massive blast of overwhelming force. This single attack hurts Meruem more than the 1,000 palm strikes before it, even though the damage ends up only being on the surface. Netero spent days meditating just to prepare for Zero Hand. After using it, his aura is completely drained and his body rapidly withers from the strain. No matter how the statue is formed, a mission is clearly evolved, either to manifest the Bodhisattva away from Netero himself or to fuel the beam that finishes the attack. But even that attack only wounds the king on the surface. With nothing left, Netero reveals his final move. He detonates the poor man's rose implanted in his chest. The explosion nearly kills Meruem, and the poison finishes him later, along with Shiapoof and Mithituyupi. By giving up his life in the end, Netero may have lost the fight, but he still secured the win for humanity's survival. And don't forget, Netero was already way past his physical prime when he fought Meruem. He even admits that he was operating at less than half his peak strength. Some fans argue that his calm, death-ready mindset during that fight actually pushed him beyond his own limits anyway. But even though he lost to a superior species, his legacy as a legendary hunter and the sheer destruction of the 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva more than earned him the top spot on this list.